ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hey folks, I'm Erin Park, host of the podcast series Expanse, Nowhere Man. A quarter of a century after he deliberately disappeared into the Great Sandy Desert, American Robert Bagucki is coming back for the first time. It turns out there's unfinished business that needs to be resolved.
I really don't think they understood.
We've got a lot of people missing. Be careful. It remains a mystery.
You can binge all episodes now of Expanse, Nowhere Man.
Donald Trump didn't like the numbers, so he sacked the messenger. So what are the implications of the US president's decision to get rid of the nation's chief statistician who dared to release revised job figures? Today's staff writer at The Atlantic, Tom Nichols, on the sledgehammer Trump is taking to democracy. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Tom, we know that Donald Trump has trouble dealing with the facts, but wow, he really has gone a step further this time, hasn't he?
Yeah, although I think that this is more of a warning to the next person rather than Trump really believing that the facts are wrong. I think he is lashing out because he's angry, and by firing this person, he's trying to send up a flare that says, from now on, give me the numbers that I prefer.
Oh, yes, all right. So last week, these new job figures came out and they weren't fantastic. Trump didn't obviously like them, so he sacks the head of the Bureau of Labour Statistics, Erica McIntyre, because he says her numbers are wrong.
I think her numbers were wrong, just like I thought her numbers were wrong before the election. Days before the election, she came out with these beautiful numbers for Kamala.
Well, he was very happy with those numbers earlier in his term when they were reflecting job growth. What happened, of course, is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which does a lot of this work by reporting, by self-reporting from American companies, has to do revisions as they get more information coming in from those companies over time. And ever since the pandemic, those companies have been a bit slower about reporting and kind of getting that data together to get it to the Labor Department. So, of course, every so often, BLS comes out and says, okay, now we're going to revise the jobs report that we put out. And Trump decided that revising the jobs numbers downward, that this was some kind of act of political sabotage.
We're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election. And there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her. Right. And you know what? I did the right thing.
Now, again, whether he really believes that after, glorifying the good numbers that he got is, I think, questionable. And so he's doing the thing that he likes to do as a former business owner, which is firing people who annoy him. Yeah. And the quickest way to annoy him is to give him bad news.
And others in the White House are also now trying to explain this sacking, aren't they? Like Kevin Hassett, who's Trump's economic advisor. He was on Fox News echoing Trump's doubts about the job figures.
If I were running the BLS and I had the biggest downward revision in 50 years, I would have a really, really detailed report explaining why it happened so that everybody really trusted the data. And so I think what we need is a fresh set of eyes at the BLS, somebody who can clean this thing up.
All right, well, Trump's accusing her of being a Biden stooge.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, these are career, civil servants in the American system. At a certain level of seniority, you have to be nominated by the president, who is the head of the executive branch, and then confirmed by the Senate. And this woman was confirmed overwhelmingly in the Senate, including by 2 U.S. senators whose names happen to be Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance, who, of course, are now the Secretary of State and the Vice President. So there was no issue with her being some sort of, political stooge. It's pretty hard to find lifelong statisticians who are also political stooges hiding in the American bureaucracy.
Wow. Okay, because these revised figures, which, showed that job growth wasn't what Donald Trump wanted it to be, it doesn't fit with his narrative, I assume, especially as he rolls out these global tariffs.
Right. Trump creates his own reality. When reality collides with his promises, he says that the reality is fake. The numbers are fake. The reports are fake. The news is fake. People are out to get me. Everything is rigged. And there's a real danger here because it's not just the president, being annoyed by these numbers. If you undermine the stability and trustworthiness of BLS, of this statistical organization, businesses across America count on these numbers, as do foreign governments. So basically, Donald Trump is saying, I don't like bad news, so I'm going to basically blind us about what's actually going on at any given moment in the American economy, which suits him just fine because he will tell his own story about it.
Yeah.
But for the rest of us, it's quite dangerous.
All right, so Tom, let's look further then into what else Donald Trump has been doing when it comes to the American bureaucracy and, of course, truth and facts. We always knew he wanted to get rid of anyone who was critical of his thinking, right? That was part of so-called Project 2025. Just remind me about that.
Well, Project 2025, it never mentions Donald Trump. It was meant to be a handbook for the next Republican president. Now, of course, they knew that the next Republican president would be Donald Trump. And so this was a document produced at the Heritage Foundation that had an overarching scheme for essentially destroying entire pieces of the American government and its bureaucratic infrastructure. And of course, people always think that sounds good because, who likes the word bureaucracy, right? I mean, you think of bureaucracy and you think about, the Department of Motor Vehicles or trying to get your license renewed or something. But here in the United States, as in every developed country, bureaucracy is how the mail gets delivered. It's how labor statistics get compiled and so on. What they really wanted to do, and this is at the heart of a lot of Project 2025, is to get rid of the apolitical servants in the bureaucracy and replace them with Republican, conservative political loyalists. And specifically people, of course, by extension, who are going to be loyal to Donald Trump, which then makes the idea of an apolitical administration of a gigantic country of 350 million people impossible because it's a return to cronyism and, political hackery. But that's exactly what the project aims for in what they would call reforming the bureaucracy.
So tell me, who else has the president deemed to be standing in his way? Who else has he been after? I know, Tom, the list is long, so you might just want to mention the highlights.
The Department of Justice, which he is hollowing out and destroying piece by piece. The Department of Defense, which is now in the hands of a talk show host. Those are the two big ones that really could have been a problem. That, along with, again, an apolitical civil service that says, well, we can't actually break the law. We can't actually engage in politics in the office. But Trump is pushing to destroy all of those regulations. And he's mostly there. I mean, he has the Department of Justice. What he doesn't have are America's judges, who he's trying, of course, to replace through appointments. But even some of his own appointees are fighting him. And so now the Trump administration is really encouraging threats against American judges. I mean, we are really, in the American judiciary is in the fight of its life here to maintain its independence. Unfortunately, a conservative majority on the Supreme Court has decided that Donald Trump is a king and can do whatever he wants. We're in a pretty dicey situation here in the United States.
And federal scientists too, right? That's really concerning.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, climate scientists, virologists, epidemiologists. If you had said to me 5 years ago that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be running the Department of Health and Human Services, I would have said that it's a comedy skit on Saturday Night Live, and I wouldn't have believed you.
Right.
Authoritarian leaders don't like experts. Experts are the people who say, look, you can yell at me and threaten me all day long, but, water is still wet and the sky is still blue. And, people are going to die because of this. I mean, there is going to be real harm to the health and well-being of a lot of Americans because of this kookery that's infested the government now. And again, firing all those civil servants, firing all those government scientists, and replacing them with people who want, jobs and nice offices is an important step in that.
Yeah, and not only sacking people, Tom, I also read that he's trying to change history, rewriting historical documents.
Well, he was very upset that the Smithsonian Institution had an exhibit about impeachment that included him, and that was taken out. Now, apparently, because of the outcry around that he is going to be put back in there, whether he likes it or not, which tells you that if people get angry enough and they make enough noise, that, you can have some effect here. But yeah, Trump simply reorders reality whenever he speaks to his liking. And again, he may well know. I mean, at this point, it's so difficult to know what Trump believes and what he imagines or what he confabulates. But he knows that he's speaking to his loyal base. And that base right now is pretty angry with him about the whole Jeffrey Epstein business, which is a whole other drama here in America. And so he's trying to throw them all kinds of red meat as fast as he can to try and get their minds off the fact that he didn't fulfill his promise to release all these files about one of his best friends.
All right, well, Tom, Donald Trump, he's restructuring the bureaucracy to suit his view of the world. Project 2025 was, in essence, a wish list of ways to expand presidential power, if you like. So is that happening in your view? Is Trump becoming more powerful?
It's hard to say. The best barometer of whether the Republicans and Donald Trump are stronger or weaker is this obvious panic that has overtaken them about losing the House next year. Is he personally more powerful? I don't think so. I think he was probably at the height of his power when he came into office and in those first few months, but there have been so many screw-ups and misfires and stumbles that I think, if there was any kind of second-term honeymoon, he's mostly squandered that away. And so I think he's still the president of the United States, and he is still a force to be reckoned with. But I don't think he's looking quite as powerful as he was even, 2 or 3 months ago, which is not to underestimate him.
Yeah. Because
he will do things that other presidents would not. Strangely enough, this Epstein business is the thing that's probably hurt him more than anything. I think he's really worried about his base turning on him, and the only time they've even threatened to turn on him has been over this Epstein business.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, the concern for a long time, of course, has been that Trump will chip away at democracy and democratic norms over his 4-year term, which is rather long. How much damage could he actually do in that time?
Oh, he's not chipping away at it. He's jackhammering away at it. The chipping away was in his first term, but that was held in check by people around him who would say things like, Mr. President, you can't do that. Or even more importantly, they would say, Mr. President, I'm not doing that. He learned from that. He has come into office with a bunch of careerists and opportunists and sycophants who are going to do whatever he tells them to do. He's calling for an investigation, for example, into Jack Smith, the special counsel who was looking into his various misdeeds in his first term. And the lawyer who will be the head of that office is a 30-year-old guy who got his law degree last year. And he'll do whatever Trump wants him to do.
Well, Tom, I don't want to be overdramatic, but could he actually succeed then in destroying or at least deeply wounding American democracy?
Destroying, probably not. And one of the strengths of the United States is that we are a sprawling, vast federal system. Donald Trump can say a lot of things, but, New York and California and Illinois and Massachusetts all have their own governors and legislatures. What he can do is encourage the collapse of democracy in pockets. It's one thing to live in Boston. It's another thing to live in Alabama or Louisiana or Mississippi or Texas, where the governor and the legislature are straight up aligned with the president and have decided that, if he doesn't like the way the Constitution is written, then they don't like it either. And so I've said in the past, I don't think American democracy collapses from coast to coast. I think it evaporates in pockets. That's where I think the real threats are going to come is in this kind of cooperation with individual states and governors and legislatures.
Tom Nichols is a staff writer at The Atlantic. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed, audio production by Sam Dunn. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. ABC News Daily will be back again on Monday. Thanks for listening.